Thank you, everybody, for joining the NAIOP Maryland Developing Leaders. We thought it'd be a good idea to put on a little virtual event talking about what we're going to be focused on next, getting into 2021 and coming out of this virus. So thank you, Paul Giulio, for the suggestion of calling it Forging Ahead. We thought that was a great theme for the day. So I think most of the folks on the line are familiar with the group, but I'm Spencer Perry with BB&T, now Truist. I'm a commercial real estate loan officer. The panel includes Paul Giulio, development manager with Hill Management. He's my co-chair on the NAIOP Maryland Developing Leaders Committee. Got Lindsay, leasing associate with Merritt Properties. Dustin Lynch, senior project manager with St. John Properties. And Michael Tait, manager of leasing for the Hughes Corporation. So thank you all for joining us. And with that, I think we'll jump right in. So the first question we talked about starting with was just that, we could really just all use a little bit of good news. So I thought we could talk about some success stories we might have from tenants kind of getting through these crazy COVID times. Lauren, I know you had an interesting one we were chatting about. You want to kind of kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'll talk about a couple tenants at Merritt that have had, success stories, either pivoting or expanding throughout COVID. Fortunately, a lot of our property is industrial, so we have had a lot of people thriving throughout COVID. A couple tenants, I'll just touch on a couple stories. East Coast Dyes, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They manufacture lacrosse equipment. And so they were obviously hit really hard in March, not selling all of the equipment that they're doing. So they quickly pivoted to making face shields for the University of Maryland. And they also ended up getting an additional PPE grant from the state, which helped them get through some of those tough months and allowed them to keep people on hire, which was great. A couple other tenants that pivoted, sort of doing the same sort of PE, whether it's hand sanitizer, masks, face shields, were Geller Lighting and Supply, Cleary Packaging, Dankmeyer, and then Marlin Steel Wire did that. And then they also have expanded again recently, acquiring another company. So they have had both pivot and expansion stories. Some other tenants within our portfolio that have expanded, we have a couple gaming companies, so they obviously have done really well throughout this with everyone being at home. One tenant in Timonium called Oxide Games just expanded in our office building. And then another tenant up in Sparks, Firaxis, has a whole building, and we're actually just about to build an additional 10,000 square feet for them on that building, which is exciting. A couple other tenants, we've had granite companies booming with all the people doing home improvement projects. I actually have a little fish guy who makes fish food and aquarium stuff that everyone is now like getting fish at their house. So he expanded. So there's been a lot of positive things that have come out of this. And we have lots of stories. So if anyone else wants to jump in.
Yeah, kind of to jump in on that, we've had a lot of expansions as well. Manufacturing in some industries slowed down a bit. And then as things kind of ramped back up and people are doing at-home things and need supplies, manufacturing has steadily increased a bit. So some of these companies that were closed for a bit, and some that actually didn't make it, were being acquired by other companies looking to expand their footprint in the market. So you've got service industries expanding into the Maryland market because it's around the DC corridor. And we have that insulation from the DC corridor and contractors for the government. So we've had that expansion, and then we have had a indoor soccer facility. So people are looking for ways to get their kids out. Everybody's stuck at home, and the few facilities that are open, once these facilities realize how to do the social distancing guidelines and how to stay in check with the state of Maryland and their local counties, we've got an indoor soccer facility that now is booked up through the summer next year, which I know is exciting to a lot of parents out there. Hey, how can I get my kids out and get them involved in something out of the house? So things like that, and construction supply companies, et cetera, are a couple of the bright spots.
I knew St. John wasn't just going to let Merritt take the stage there and share their success stories. Dustin, we talked a bit about projects that have kept moving during this shutdown and just the importance of having available space as we kind of come out of this. You have any specifics there you're able to share with the group?
Yeah, well, I guess one is, the government entities in the area that need to be able to ramp up specifically because of COVID and due to COVID. Having that spec office and warehouse space available right away really has been critical. For anybody who doesn't know, we're more in the flex office warehouse space. We do have some Class A and some retail as well, but we've had a state entity that needed to store PPE right away and have a facility to go in and say, hey, I need 5,000 square feet of conditioned or unconditioned warehouse. And how quickly can you get me in? How quickly can we put our materials there? So having that spec office space available with power and gas to the suite already, and basically saying, here's the keys, you can come on in, has been critical, as well as our relationships that we've forged with the local jurisdictions, such as Anne Arundel County, the state of Maryland, from the construction side, the local inspectors, those relationships that we've forged over the past several decades has really helped us to push things along for the items that we needed to get permitted and get tenants into spaces. And then as well as the inspectors out in the field saying, hey, we can work with you on this as long as you're meeting life safety requirements. We can help you out on ABC in the space. Realizing that these tenants, are struggling and doing everything they can to stay in business. The local jurisdictions really, if you have that relationship, they're really trying to help you help your tenants succeed, which has been very nice.
Yeah, I'll sort of piggyback on that too. So obviously it's sort of county by county in regards to permit timing, but typically, like Baltimore County, for example, before COVID is day in, day out for regular tenant improvement jobs, at least for our scale of a company. And right now it's taking anywhere from a month to 2 months for permits. So making sure you have that product that works for these companies that need space right away is really beneficial, because unfortunately right now things do take longer. So having that product without having to get permits is very helpful from a timing perspective.
Yeah, we're starting to, or we've actually built 4 new spec suites at 6100 Meriwether Drive, which is the newest office building in downtown Columbia. Because we believe that with everything going on in the world, companies are going to demand flexibility and turnkey solutions, and they're going to want to be in the space as soon as possible. So we've seen tremendous success across the entire portfolio, not just at 6100, in providing the companies the ability to not need a long-term lease, but to be able to have space where they can say, okay, I'm going to be in here for 2 years. I don't know where I'm going to be at 3 or 4. So we're able to move them throughout the portfolio and not need to invest a bunch of capital where they're going to need a 7 to a 10 year, even a 5-year lease at that. So that's something that we've seen and that we're very bullish on is being able to provide quick space, move-in ready, and flexible terms.
Paul, if you don't have anything you want to add on that one from Hill's perspective, I know we kind of want to just get your thoughts on just how the day-to-day conversations have changed between you and your current or prospective tenants since the announcement of the vaccines. I think, it's really refreshing that we can all now see the light at the end of this tunnel and, look forward to getting back to normal in 21. You have any thoughts you'd like to share on that?
Yeah, well, this week, it's definitely been positive news coming out about the vaccine. We haven't talked directly with tenants about it, but I think internally here, it was all positive news. You got 2 vaccines now that are 90% plus effective. And, they're going to try to get them approved by the FDA in 2 weeks here. And they're hoping by the end of this year that they'll be able to start rolling them out. So, I think that, it should make everybody who's, worried about returning to their office or their warehouse or their retail space a little bit more, I guess, inclined to come back to work knowing that there's a safe and effective vaccine available now. So I think, in a couple months here, you're going to start seeing companies maybe shifting back from, the work from home back into the office. And, we're looking forward to that because it's definitely been tough for us. And, like what Lauren was saying and Dustin was saying, the flex in the warehouse space, we have a pretty good amount of that as well. And that stayed really strong. And the one thing that we've been working on through COVID is another project in Glen Burnie. We're actually building 66,000 feet of flex warehouse there, trying to get that available probably in March. So we see a big demand for that still. The occupancy for our portfolio for flex and warehouses, and exceeding 95%. So we're like, we're almost turning some people away now. And we're like, we got to get more product for ourselves out there. So hopefully get that wrapped up in March. And that's definitely one of the strongest things coming out of this thing is flex and warehouse. So we definitely see that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that our conversations have really changed much, but we've definitely seen an increase in activity over the last, I would say, 90 days, and whether that's because of the vaccine or other reasons. But it does seem that there is some renewed optimism, at least in the office world, about folks getting back to the office. But I think, like I touched on before a little bit, the key for these companies is going to be able to provide their employees with flexibility.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say the activity for the office market, from our perspective too, has picked up for mostly smaller tenants. I would say, though, I think a lot of the large corporations are still, following orders across the country. But in that, under 10,000 square feet, maybe even really under 5,000 square feet, we've seen an uptick in tours in that size, which is nice.
Awesome. So I know I've shared with you all one of the takeaways my company had seen coming out of this thing is just this is the largest work from home experiment in history, and I think some of the larger employers are kind of prepping to have folks work remotely some of the time and shifting to more shared office space sort of environments, kind of hoteling. There's a couple examples of that I'm aware of. I'm also curious if there's any other specific reconfigurations that you all might be seeing. I don't know if it's upgrades to air handling equipment or temperature checks or such. Kind of what's the expectation of a landlord talking to the tenant about what they're going to be doing next year?
Well, I guess, Spencer, we've in some of our properties have installed the UV lighting in some of the rooftop units here at our office and both at some other properties throughout our portfolio to kind of provide that level of service and to our tenants, because as we move through this, everybody's more and more, I don't want to say scared, but cognizant of everything that if before this, somebody didn't know about how a building works and what goes into it and out of it. And you worked in an office space, you sure as heck kind of know by now how things work and what different fragile touch points are of an office space. So everybody's kind of been more keen and aware on that. And then throwing social distancing into the mix within an office space obviously causes some pain points. So, generically, we've seen some expansions of people who have training centers and need to keep training going on for different certifications, and they've had to expand, and so they can build into the expansion just one training facility that hopefully in the future we'll have room for 40 people to stay in there, but now they can only train 10 people in there. So people are kind of forward thinking in that regard right now.
Yeah, I can piggyback on that too. So some things that we have done, we've like upgraded the filters, which I didn't know what this meant before COVID, but from MERV 10 to MERV 13, but we've done things like that. We can do air flushes of our buildings. So when we have had a positive case, we can completely flush it with outside air. We have looked into the UV lights. We haven't actually done any of those yet. And we haven't really had people requesting. It's more just asking what we're doing. And we've been just trying to communicate what we are doing in regards to, the air circulation and the cleaning and all of that. And people seem to be happy with what we've been doing and how we've been communicating it. Another thing that we did was we sent an email out to all of our tenants, giving them the opportunity to use our design services if they wanted to reconfigure their office or, eliminate touch points. And we have over 1,500 tenants in our portfolio. And to date, I wrote this down, we have had 19 inquiries. So it's not a ton of people that at this point have reached out. And again, most of it was, laying out their furniture to space out more, eliminating touch points in the bathrooms, things like that. But we haven't had a ton of requests at this point. But again, I think at least in the office market, it's still probably 20% back at the office. So I think we'll continue to see that as people start to come back more.
Yeah, the big theme from our property management team has been communication. When everything with COVID broke, our property management team held a Zoom webinar and basically talked through the procedures and protocols to every single tenant that wanted to jump on. And then maybe 3 or 4 months later, they held a second one when folks are starting to come back to the office. So that way it gave folks a platform to be able to ask questions and talk through what are we going to do in this situation or this situation. So that way they can get comfort in bringing their employees back to the office. And I guess one specific thing on the property management side as well that they've been doing is when there is a COVID case and they have been exposed in the building, they're actually doing electrostatic sprays of the common areas, the lobby, but not the tenant spaces that would be on the tenant, since that's their space, but making sure that the lobby and the common areas are all sprayed, so that way it's clear for the next morning, and eliminating any risk for those folks that are coming around.
Yeah, we've seen the same thing. We haven't had much from a tenant standpoint, contacting us, asking us, what are we doing? But I don't think we've really had any cases within an office building. And from the warehouse standpoint or flex warehouse standpoint, if something did come up, it's on the tenant to take care of it themselves. But, we have been more diligent with our cleaning, our janitorial in the common areas and, elevators and bathrooms. We've ramped that up. But, one of the things we have been seeing is from a tenant standpoint is that a big mix of people either expanding to space their employees out, or they're actually downsizing and they're kind of doing almost flex hours where people will come into the office that week and they'll have a certain amount of people in the office and then a certain amount of people working from home. And that's kind of been, I don't know, I've seen a lot of advertising to take that into account.
Well, I know a lot of our conversation's just been about industrial and office, kind of the NAIOP's traditional food groups, but you all have investments in some other asset classes. And I know, Paul, you were telling me a bit about how your multifamily and self-storage portfolios were holding up. Thought it would be interesting to hear the group's insights on any of those sort of things. I don't know if you have any retail or other product type comments you might want to share.
Yeah. The multifamily and the storage has been really strong. The occupancy on both sides actually increased during the whole pandemic. At one point, I think we were 99% occupied and 100% leased portfolio wide for our multifamily portfolio. I mean, it was crazy, and we're maintaining probably about 96% occupancy, 99% leased portfolio wide. And, our team has kept the arrears down and has been flexible with residents, with payment plans and, not making them pay everything like right up front at, the beginning of the month. We're kind of doing installment payments, which has helped a lot of our residents out a lot. And it's also kept our arrears pretty low. From a national standpoint, I think a lot of people are running about 20% arrears right now in multifamily. And we've hovered around 10, 12% and haven't gone too much higher above that. And then storage, I mean, it almost was virtually unchanged. Traffic did die down for a little bit for about a month, but then it picked right back up. And I mean, that's another industry there where we're looking at 96% occupancies at our storage facilities and very little turnover too. That's the other thing with multifamily and the storage, and people are staying put, and they're getting in and they're staying there, and there's very little turnover. So it's been really strong, and it's been good for us on that side.
Yeah, we're getting ready to break ground early next year on another multifamily project called Marlowe, which will be more than 450 units that will be added to the Merriweather District. And that will really anchor kind of the Merriweather District and really create a cool streetscape, like city-like atmosphere. You have a road going through it, retail on the ground floor, to really make it all truly walkable. And it's interesting that we're using each project as really a learning experience to develop a unit mix that's going to reflect what the future demand will look like. So Marlowe will really be geared more towards like the one bedrooms, the junior one bedrooms, but they'll have dens to be able to give folks who want the flexibility to be able to work from home. It gives them that separate workspace instead of having to work from their bedroom and then they're in one space for the rest of their day. Because we've seen a really strong lease up in Juniper. In Juniper, we started taking occupants in March of this year, and we're pacing to be 50% occupied in that building by the end of this year, which is just spectacular in the COVID environment. So with that, we're using kind of Marlowe or really Juniper as a case study and really kind of taking it to the next level and building our unit mix that way. And it'll have all the amenities that you could ask for, from pools to fitness centers to everything in between.
Yeah, we've had some experience, I guess, on the retail side of possibly some users falling out and not being able to make it. Unfortunately, that's just kind of the way of the world these days. But that has also given opportunity to other users to expand their footprint within the same building in some cases. And some of these coffee shop owners, some can run their shop a little bit better than others. And, the kind of cream rises to the top a little bit, not to say that in like a callous way. But it's given opportunities to different facets in retail. We've had a flower shop and a coffee shop just open recently. And then on the self-storage side, I know we're doing a little bit actually better than projected on a couple of the self-storage facilities that we've just recently opened up. So that's good news there.
Yeah, from Merritt's perspective, we only have a very tiny bit of retail. And it's basically very, very small shopping centers that aren't even grocery anchored. So they've struggled a little bit because it's a lot of the small restaurants that, are just hopefully getting by. Some will probably go out of business. So I feel like that'll be more telling over the next 6 months to see how that all shakes out.
Well, with the renewed stimulus talks out there, we hope that the restaurants can get the help they need to get through what could be a difficult winter. So, definitely, if you're comfortable dining in or outside, or if not, order some takeout from all your favorite places. Let's do our part to get them through the winter. Before we get to this last question, just a reminder, we do have the chat function and the Q&A open. So if anybody's got any questions or if you want to, I don't know, talk about Paul's tie dimple, he's happy to chime in on that. But had one more for the group. But Mike, I thought it was a neat segue actually when you started talking about what you're trying to create there at Merriweather, because I'm familiar with one of the things you have going on. But just for the group, I'd say just anything interesting that your companies are focused on doing during this unusual holiday season. And I know you've got something where maybe we could all get outside and do something fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that is, I guess, that we've done that is very near and dear to my heart, coming from a hockey background, is we built an outdoor ice skating rink on Colorburst Park behind Juniper. So it's about 6,000 square feet of outdoor ice skating rink. And what we're really trying to do is give the community, whether it's tenants, visitors, folks that live outside in Columbia, the ability to have a socially distant, fun environment. And with a lot of the groups that do typically put on the ice skating rinks in the winter months haven't done it this year. We wanted to be able to provide folks really in the greater Washington, Baltimore metro with the ability to be able to do that.
We've got, and basically in a bunch of our different parks, like in Maple Lawn and Lakeshore, and over at CRC in Catonsville. I think that toy drive has been going on for over 25 years now. Basically, park by park, we have some various toy and food drives that we participate in and try to get the community of each park kind of interested and joining together as a community for a specific function for the holidays. So we've got a bunch of that going on throughout all of our parks that we're pretty proud of. And the property managers really spearhead that and help out with that. So that between that and to echo kind of what Spencer said about, supporting the local businesses, et cetera, we're all in this together kind of thing, and anything that we can do to support our local businesses and tenants, et cetera, I think it's going to be really key to helping each other through this.
Okay, unless Lauren or Paul have any other thoughts on that one, we do have a question on the chat. So question is, flexible workspaces and the adaptability to changing business needs were a big part of everyone's conversation today. Short-term leases and spec suites. Are you seeing more interest towards an outdated and typical cubicles, or considering more of the flexible open space design in the less than 10,000 square foot spaces? Mike, I think you might have some really interesting perspectives on this one, because I know you lease both some older product as well as some brand new Class A space. So maybe you kind of take this one.
Yeah, and it's not the answer that you're going to want to hear, but it really just depends. It depends much on the industry that the business is in and how they're going to work. If they're a lot of heads down workers, they may need more quiet space, or if they're a CPA firm, they may need more offices, but it really is just going to depend on what their business is. So I can't generalize and say this sector is going to do this sector is going to do that. It just depends.
Yeah, I'd have to totally agree with that. I think, and people are, even when I'm on tours, people are asking me, what am I seeing? And I'm like, it's all over the board. It's people's comfort levels. It's the way they work. It's, how they're productive. So I don't really think it's everyone's going towards open space or everyone's going towards private offices. I think it's literally a mix, and it's case by case. So, yeah, and there's still a lot of uncertainty. So,
yeah, the biggest thing will be the companies that are able to provide flexible solutions for their employees, because I think what we're going to see is going to be this hybrid model where there's some folks working from home on 2 days a week and then in the office 3 days a week, and to be able to provide them the ability to work behind a closed door or work in an open space. I think that's going to be the biggest trend.
Yeah, health and safety is obviously number one for employer-employee relationship, and every employer has to be aware of and accommodating to their employees' needs when it comes to health and safety. So, like you all just said, you really kind of have to be adaptable, and it is a case-by-case basis. A couple of years ago, it was kind of fun and sexy to be in an all open work environment where there's no dividers up between everybody and everybody kind of comes and goes as they pleases, and VPs are out on the floor and no one has an office anymore, which is good in certain regards to team building, et cetera. And then in a scenario like a pandemic, it's maybe not the best thing. So people are starting to rethink things. And I think the smaller 10,000 square foot and less users are obviously able to get a better finger on the pulse of their small business and know what works for everybody, rather than these large national users who have to basically come up with a game plan and say, this is what we're going to do for all 40,000 employees. They're a little more under the gun and under the pressure of coming up with a set game plan, and aren't as fluid and don't have the ability to be as fluid as our smaller businesses. So smaller businesses get the nod there for being able to be a little bit more adaptable.
Okay, if get the lines open, so if anyone has any other questions, please do send them on in. I think if we don't, I just wanted to just mention that we miss seeing everyone. The in-person networking events were a big part of what we did. It's not all that we did, but sorry, I'm seeing that Brett was trying to get a question in here, so we'll read his off in a little bit. Getting back to the in-person events as soon as it's smart to do so is important to us. So we look forward to seeing everyone as we get into some of the warmer months next year. If we could get creative with some outdoor sort of functions in the meantime, we'll be keeping everyone apprised of the updates. And we expect to put together some sort of community service type of function where maybe it does or doesn't require everyone to be in the same place. But look forward to hearing from us about a slate of 2021 events. And Brett's question for the group is, are the expansions of current office tenants with the same building / property because of COVID long-term deals? Which is a good question. I'm sure that's another it depends sort of answer, but is anyone expanding on a longer term basis to lock in maybe a favorable rent environment, or is it generally a shorter term sort of arrangement?
My particular experience with one specific tenant was, they were kind of up for renewal and then they wanted to expand at the same time. So it was a kind of a longer term deal. They weren't thinking of, let's expand for a year because of COVID and get ourselves some more space, and then we're going to shrink back. So I haven't really seen a whole lot of that. If you're talking for like a warehouse space and people need more storage, et cetera, or we're more inclined to listen to something for a short term for a, COVID related reason that they need to expand and have more storage for the warehouse, and then probably shrink back. The ability to have that spec space available to ramp up and ramp it back down quickly is, again, very important. So.
Yeah, I would say the same from my perspective. I would say more of our expansions have been on the industrial side, but we have had a couple office expansions, and they have been long-term deals. So that's good. Spencer, there was a question too before about rent relief. I don't
I'm
know.
having some issues with the actual Q&A there. If someone else can open that and read off. Brett said he had tried to send it through there.
Here, I can read. There's another one from Brett Parker asking how we're dealing with tenants asking for rent relief. I've heard some developers extending the term of the lease for short-term relief. Any other strategy opportunities to maybe see a long-term positive impact by being flexible in the near term?
Yeah, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, on a per-tenant basis. I mean, like, I'm going to echo the same thing I said before. It's going to depend, and the way that we work at Howard Hughes, and I'm sure everyone here as well, it's going to be a partnership between the landlord and the tenant. So if the tenant truly needs rent relief, we're going to try and work with them. But if they're just asking for a handout just because to take advantage of the situation, that's going to be a much harder conversation between property management and the tenant who's just trying to take advantage of the situation. At the end of the day, we still have a mortgage to pay.
Yeah, right there with you. Same thing.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, we're not really trying to give out rent relief, but trying to help people get through this time and figure it out whenever it's over.
I think the one thing that
sorry, go ahead, Dustin.
Just to add on to that, I think the one thing that we did do from a standpoint of really helping out tenants is we got in touch with a bank and helped tenants get in contact with someone at this bank to help them through the process of getting the PPP. And that seemed to help. And it also, kind of put to rest some of the calls for rent relief with a lot of tenants for us. And that was a good plan from our property management team there.
As the banker and finance guy on the call, one thing that some of my customers have brought up is just how different the conversations can be when you're dealing with like the national tenants and you're dealing with their real estate department that might be in Seattle versus the mom and pop that's been in your space for 40 years, and you really want to find a way to get creative and get them through. I have not seen many where they're just offering straight up rent concessions, but creative deferrals or maybe lease extensions that otherwise would have come with a pretty hefty TI package where, that's just a different point of negotiation. So there are some creative ways, but agree with what everyone said, that it's really just case by case and, trying to get creative to find, mutually agreeable solutions. So Lauren, you can see the Q&A, and apparently it's just me having the tech issues. Do you see any other questions out there?
It's on the chat, but there's one more. Hold on. What does the recent T. Rowe Price giant lease signing in Harbor Point mean for the Baltimore office market in general?
Anyone who hadn't seen the news, I think yesterday was when the article pushed out, it was 450,000 square feet for a beauty over at Harbor Point, which is just fantastic. And T. Rowe's obviously a huge institution downtown. They said they're committed to continuing to invest in their Owings Mills campus as well. But it is going to be a big block of space coming online right next door to where my office had been just before this whole thing shut down. So I think it's nice to see one of the anchor institutions keep a commitment to downtown Baltimore, but it is shifting east a little bit. So how the Inner Harbor shakes out kind of remains to be seen.
Yeah. It's definitely a double-edged sword. It's great that it's staying within the Baltimore market and moving a little bit east, but it also leaves a big hole within the CBD, which will be a challenging backfill in 2024 when they're scheduled to go over to the new building. I also think it shows some optimism for new construction as well, that folks are willing to take the shiny new tower and go there and invest in themselves and their employees and give them the ability to really attract and retain some of the best talent.
Yeah, I think it's great for the area, for Baltimore City. And we almost should have started with that because that's a little bit of good news, Spencer. So any investment in Baltimore City economically is good for everybody. You know, we don't have much of very, very small fraction of our portfolio is within the city, but you know, economically everything trickles down, and you want to see good investments and people like T. Rowe staying within this area at least. So it all trickles down.
Yeah, I completely agree. And there'd been such a focus on, you know, trying to create more of a 7-day environment around that area, office conversions into multifamily and such, a little bit more retail. I think kind of you couple that push with how people might be getting back to normal once the vaccine is out, and we all kind of forget what this whole COVID thing was about. You know, walkable urban environments exist for a reason. We're all social creatures. Probably by the time that space is being vacated in 2024, we've got a lot different opinions about what it might be used for than we do today. So be interesting to see how it plays out over the next few years, but I'm optimistic. That's it. I think that was a good chat. Just thank the panelists for joining. And if anyone has any ideas on future topics of conversation, please drop us a note and let us know. We're happy to do this again if you all find it beneficial. And thanks again for joining.